Stephen King is quite prolific, having written countless novels and short stories. Many have been adapted into movies or TV shows, and there is plenty more to come. These are all the upcoming Stephen King movies and TV shows that fans can anticipate coming down the pipeline. Stephen King has said before that Lisey's story is one of his favorites of his own novels. The story hits close to home for him. He told IndieWire, "It's a story about love and marriage and the creative impulse." Now he's had a hand in its adaptation, writing every episode of the limited-run series. He calls it his passion project, so by default, we're more interested than ever. Lisey's story stars Julianne Moore as Lisey Landon, widow of famous author Scott Landon, who is played by Clive Owen. She has to grapple with tense, real-life horror that resurrects all the buried memories of their marriage. That being said, filling in the gaps of their love story might save her life. The result is what director Pablo Larraín calls, quote, "a romantic suspense thriller with fantasy elements," which should ring true for fans of the book. Lisey's story starts airing on Apple TV Plus in summer 2021. Like Hulu's Castle Rock, Epic's Chapelwaite is a Stephen King TV series that isn't exactly an adaptation. Instead, it's a prequel to his famous vampire novel, Salem's Lot. The series promises an unusual and exciting notion: 1850s Stephen King, a lavish blend of history and gothic terror. Adrian Brody stars as Captain Charles Boone, a widower who returns to his family home in Preacher's Corners, Maine, where he meets Rebecca Morgan, played by Emily Hampshire, an ambitious young author who hopes that serving as the Boone's governess will give her plenty of writing material. We're sure it will, especially since Charles and Rebecca are due to come face to face with mysteries and horrors that tie into their family's histories. Pet Sematary, Stephen King's harrowing novel of what happens when sometimes dead is better, has already had 2 big-screen adaptations, and soon streaming service Paramount Plus will offer fans a prequel. Lorenzo Di Bonaventura and Jeff Bueller, the producer and writer of the 2019 adaptation, will have a hand in shaping the new story. According to them, it's supposed to be an origin story, so this may wind up being along the same lines as the Salem's Lot prequel, Chapelwaite. The upcoming Firestarter remake, directed by Keith Thomas, is all set to cover new territory. Thomas spoke to Cinema Blend about his appreciation of the original 1984 adaptation. Its fidelity frees him to work on a remake that explores the book's themes without sticking so strictly to the text. He said that while he's making changes, he thinks the results will explore a lot, quote, that King obviously is hinting at throughout the book. With a new direction that's inventive but still deeply involved with the original novel, the Firestarter remake is off to a good start. Stephen King's novella, The Gingerbread Girl, is a tight, grueling, and suspenseful story about a grieving woman whose running route leads her into the path of a killer. It has all the ingredients of a good movie, which is why we're excited one is now in the works. The film will reunite King and Craig R. Baxley, who already has a number of King productions under his belt, including Storm of the Century, Rose Red, and Kingdom Hospital. The two are set to collaborate on a screenplay, and then Baxley will settle into the director's chair. Sleeping Beauties is a 2017 novel co-written by Stephen King and his son, Owen King, featuring an eerie premise where women begin suffering from a condition where they fall into a deep, cocooned sleep that takes their unconscious mind somewhere else completely. AMC is hoping to put together an open-ended series, and the network has already ordered a pilot scripted by Owen King. Full series pickup will probably follow soon. Mile 81 has a concept that will probably be familiar even to casual Stephen King fans: the evil car. The story's premise is diabolically simple. Drivers see what they think is a stranded automobile, an ordinary station wagon, and stop to help out the driver. Very, very bad idea. Its film adaptation is in the hands of horror director Alistair Legrand. The officially released summary doesn't mention a car, which may mean the story is due to be tweaked a bit. Either way, we know we're looking at a movie about strangers at a rest stop, in particular a heroic kid named Pete banding together to face down a dangerous mystery. And that sounds pretty good, even if we don't get another evil car out of it. Hey, we'll always have Christine. Stephen King's The Dark Half is a story of what happens when a writer kills off his pen name, only to find that identity taking on a murderous life of its own. It was adapted back in 1993, but mostly fell flat at the box office. Now the novel is finding new life in unexpected hands. Alex Ross Perry. Perry's previous movies have included the emotionally raw Her Smell and the darkly comedic Listen Up, Philip. A great director, but a surprising choice. That being said, Perry's involvement has our interest piqued. Even if he's not an obvious match for a Stephen King story, he has a knack for portraying complex emotions and getting fantastic performances from his actors, both of which should come in especially handy for tackling the psychological horror and identity issues of the dark half. The Tommyknockers is a Stephen King novel that even King has gone so far as to call, quote, an awful book. But it's also a powerful story with a lot of hard-hitting themes, and it's clearly a book executive producer Larry Sinitsky is hooked on. In 1993, he helped produce the miniseries, and now he's serving as executive producer for the upcoming film. Sinitsky still believes in the story wholeheartedly. The Hollywood Reporter quoted part of his mission statement. It's an allegorical tale of addiction, the threat of nuclear power, the danger of mass hysteria, and the absurdity of technical evolution run amok. Topics as relevant today as the day the novel was written. It is also a tale about the eternal power of love and the grace of redemption. It's a strong pitch, and it's attracted some impressive talent. Horror veterans James Wan and Roy Lee are producing, and they've brought on screenwriter Jeremy Slater, the creator of the Gone Too Soon TV version of The Exorcist. They all know horror, and Lee even has 2 previous King productions under his belt. Slater knows how to script adaptations that show love for their sources but still move in new directions. That might be exactly the right recipe for adapting a book that's controversial even with its author. Fans have waited a long time for an adaptation of The Talisman, the inventive dark fantasy novel co-written by Stephen King and Peter Straub. Now, it's finally happening. It's had a bumpy road in its progress towards the big screen. It started out as a planned TV adaptation. Then it became a movie that was going to be written and directed by Josh Boone, the mastermind of 2020's The Stand miniseries. Now it is set to become a Netflix series helmed by the Duffer Brothers, the creators of Stranger Things. It's a great moment for Steven Spielberg, who loved the book so much that he got Universal to buy the rights for all time, so he'd always be able to have a hand in bringing it to life. On working with King, he told Entertainment Weekly, "It's something that I've wanted to see come to theaters for the last 35 years. I feel that in the very near future, that's going to be our richest collaboration." We love the geeky thrill of 2 of our pop culture favorites colliding. A Stephen King book getting an Edgar Wright adaptation pretty much feels like a dream come true. It bridges a horror geek generation gap, bringing one of the best and funniest genre directors of recent years into collaboration with a veteran king of horror. The best of both worlds for a reimagining of The Running Man. Plus, this remake offers book fans a chance to forget about the notoriously unfaithful 1987 adaptation starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wright's already promised that he'll stick closer to the original story. He has a deft hand with both satire and gory violence, so we're sure that The Running Man can finally get the brutal, darkly comedic cat-and-mouse adaptation it deserves. In the family of Stephen King adaptations, Shudder's Creepshow series is something like a cousin. It's the offspring of the gleefully lurid Creepshow movie, which was a collaboration between Stephen King and George Romero. It borrows the movie's framework, which features the titular Creep introducing each episode's standalone tale via the Creepshow comic book, but most of its stories don't originate with King. Regardless, it's still part of the family. We're always delighted to see it, and 2021 will see a fresh batch of fun, spooky episodes. Shudder has announced a handful of planned storylines, all of which sound promising. Keith David starring in a possible Deal with the Devil drama that also involves an exterminator? Sign us up. The Institute may not qualify as a classic Stephen King novel in terms of when it was published, but it's still about as Kingian a novel as you can get. Kids with special powers, sinister government agencies, horror, friendship, Maine, and more. It's fresh and new and capable of delivering a powerful hit of nostalgia, so it's not a surprise that someone bought the rights immediately. A limited TV series is now in the works, with David E. Kelley and Jack Bender working on development. This isn't their first King adaptation. They both worked on the Mr. Mercedes TV series, something which clearly revved them up to return to Stephen King's playground.
And Stephen King is a master at writing what scares us, what's under our bed, so to speak.
Some pending Stephen King adaptations have us excited, some have us intrigued, and at least one leaves us completely baffled. We say this because C.U.J.O, King's classic novel of a good dog gone rabid has now become C.U.J.O, which apparently stands for Canine Unit Joint Operations? Huh? Whatever it is, it's a far cry from the ordinary horror of a mother and son trapped in a hot car and menaced by a prowling dog. The remake might be taking on a science fictional spin or maybe some kind of canine angle. All we know is that it's set to star DJ Perry and be directed by Lang Elliott, whose filmmaking career has been on pause for years. Needless to say, we can't help but wonder how his take will differ from the original. The Shining is one of Stephen King's scariest novels, and it led to one of the best horror movies of all time.
Come and play with us.
And like the guests of the haunted Overlook Hotel, the story won't stay dead, and fans don't want it to. King followed up on Danny Torrance's adult life with the sequel Dr. Sleep, which got an underrated adaptation helmed by director Mike Flanagan. Now, The Shining has come back to us again, this time in the form of the proposed HBO Max series Overlook. The official announcement was pretty bare bones, but the title suggests that we might be ditching the Torrance family and focusing on the hotel itself. The original novel hints at a long history of atrocities and horrors, so it's ripe with potential for a terrifying and sprawling prequel series. Whatever happens, we can all relish the anticipation of the terrors to come. The Jaunt is a short story that starts off as science fiction but ends as one of Stephen King's most terrifying works, and it has a real doozy of an ending. Barnes & Noble reviewer Sam Reeder praised its final line as, quote, both a cosmic joke and one of fiction's darkest examples of curiosity killing the cat. Now, The Jaunt is set to become a TV show. MRC Television, which already has King experience from producing HBO's The Outsider, has tapped David Erickson, co-creator of Fear the Walking Dead, to develop the story into a potentially open-ended series. As much as we're wondering how Erickson will expand the premise enough to carry a full show, we know fans will appreciate how a full-length Jaunt series echoes the story's key phrase: it's longer than you think. Stephen King's novel Joyland has a great setting, a down-at-the-heels 70s amusement park, and an equally great mystery. Those are two ingredients for a terrific TV show. So we're happy to say that Freeform has picked it up and a series is in the works. Freeform's Carrie Burke has shown great enthusiasm for the show's prospects. She said, "We are honored to be working with Stephen King, a master storyteller who understands the importance of culturally embedded tales that resonate with audiences on a deeply personal level. That sense of resonance is especially important for adapting a novel like Joyland, where memories haunt us just as much as ghosts. If the upcoming series gets that bittersweet pang right and knows how to aim for the heart, it's sure to stick with viewers." Stephen King originally published The Revelations of Becca Paulson as a short story and subsequently folded a version of it into The Tommyknockers, his novel of sinister alien influence. Once a standalone Outer Limits episode, it's now entering its next and most surprising stage of life, a series on the CW. The CW seems like an odd match for King, and it only gets stranger from there. At first, you might think the network is looking for Revelations to fill a horror niche formerly occupied by the long-running Supernatural, but the released concept of the series suggests they're going for something wildly different. Deadline reports the show's logline. After accidentally shooting herself in the brain with a nail gun, a Pollyanna-ish Becca Paulson is recruited by an over-it Jesus to be his chosen one in stopping the apocalypse. In order to save the world, Becca will have to prove that our deeply backward planet Earth is redeemable, starting with her quirky Midwestern hometown. That's probably enough to outrage Stephen King purists, but we're still curious to see how this kind of tart, offbeat humor blends with King's original material. Stephen King's The Boogeyman story is an eerie, effective blend of psychological reasoning and that classic horror concept, the monster in the closet. Brian Woods and Scott Beck, who are working to bring a Boogeyman movie to the screen, already have experience tackling this kind of unease. They co-wrote A Quiet Place, an inventive and unsettling horror movie about people who must constantly stay quiet in order to avoid a certain and gory death. They're enthusiastic about their new horror project, and so is Stephen King, who has already approved their proposed script. The Boogeyman is taking an appropriately shambling path towards completion, but we're ready to watch it. We'll just have to barricade our closet doors shut afterward. Stephen King's short novel Elevation is now in the hands of Jack Bender, who is ready for a change of pace after working on darker King adaptations like Under the Dome, Mr. Mercedes, and The Outsider. One of the things that attracts him to Elevation is that it's both a classically enjoyable King read and a genuinely uplifting tale. He told Cinema Blend, "It's really about how we can all be better people. And it's a wonderful story. It's one of those little gems, and I felt that from when I first read it. King has already signed off on Bender's script, so it's only a matter of time before we can expect to see this adaptation on the big screen." Thomas Jane has starred in a whole set of Stephen King movies, Dreamcatcher, 1922, and The Mist. So when he formed his own production company with Courtney Lauren Penn, they announced that his King film streak would inevitably continue. They're set to adapt from a Buick 8, a novel about a group of Pennsylvania state troopers and the strange and dangerous car they find themselves guarding over the years. There's no rush on the project. Jane said on the podcast The Kingcast that recent protests about police brutality make him lean towards putting such a cop-heavy story on hold, but we do know that Jim Mickle is attached to direct. The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is a 1999 novel that sort of serves as Stephen King's attempt at young adult fiction. It's a scary and gripping story about Trisha McFarlane, a lost little girl who must evade the god of the lost, a mysterious force stalking her through the woods. She has a tiny bit of wilderness survival knowledge and a lot of grit and determination. The novel will be brought to the screen by director Lynn Ramsey, who has worked on a wide range of interesting films that should give her a great toolkit for tackling the story of a girl as tough and heroic as Trisha McFarlane. Fans have waited years for a film version of The Long Walk, Stephen King's dystopian novel about a competition where young men start out on a walk and can't stop or slow down. Breaking the rules gets you shot, so they must walk or die until only one walker remains. It's a simple premise that has nonetheless spent a long time eluding any attempts to put it on the screen. But finally, it just might make it. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark director Andre Overdahl has teamed up with screenwriter James Vanderbilt, known for writing the blockbuster Zodiac, to attempt a successful adaptation. Overdahl told ComingSoon.net, "This script was written on spec by James Vanderbilt when he did not even have the rights to it. He just wrote it out of pure love for the book, and in the end, suddenly, the rights were open and he was able to go to King with his script and say, 'Can we do this?' That's the kind of devotion we like to see, and in fact, New Line bought the rights, so now they can do it. We can't wait until they do." Carrie is one of Stephen King's most adapted works, and it's set to gain yet another take as FX has started developing a limited series. Intriguingly, FX may be looking to take a new approach to Carrie's social isolation. Collider sources suggest that it's possible the producers will enlist either a trans actress, an actress of color, or both to play the titular character. If so, that's an update that will let the series say new things about how high school society treats the people who exist in the margins. And that's something that helps justify this novel getting another turn in the spotlight. HBO considers The Outsider, its adaptation of the Stephen King thriller of the same name, to be complete after one season, a limited-run series that confines itself to the events of the novel. But that doesn't necessarily mean the show is over. There are rumors that MRC, The Outsider's production company, is shopping the series around to see who might take it up on a second season. And it's easy to see why someone would bite. The original story of The Outsider is wrapped up, but Stephen King's novella, If It Bleeds, features some of the same characters, offering material that a new season could easily pull from. Stephen King also confirmed with Entertainment Weekly that he's seen prospective Season 2 scripts. It's all enough to have fans champing at the bit for more. The third season of Mr. Mercedes will once again be back with viewers, even though its old home, AT&T Network Audience, is now defunct. The first two seasons of the acclaimed Stephen King crime series were previously picked up by Peacock, but the third vanished with Audience's shutdown. However, in 2021, Peacock will also acquire what King and director Jack Bender both consider its, quote, best season yet. Peacock has released a short trailer for the third season, and with the first two seasons already available for streaming, this is the perfect time to catch up and get hooked. While many of the adaptations we've seen so far in this list are careening steadily towards the big screen, there are plenty of others that have been confirmed but are still in the primordial stages of development. First off, let's take a look at a slew of shorter pieces that are queued up in the Hollywood assembly line. The Little Green God of Agony, a story about a rich man who hires a kind of exorcist to rid him of his persistent, unbearable pain, is now in the hands of Ian Goldberg and Richard Nain, who produce and write the hit series Fear the Walking Dead, respectively. The Bone Church, one of King's few narrative poems that depicts a deadly jungle expedition, is set to be produced by Chris Long, known for his work on The Americans. Rest Stop, a brief but brutal tale of a writer who channels his darker pseudonym in order to intervene in an attack happening at a rest stop, has been entrusted to the previously mentioned Alex Ross Perry, who is also working on a new adaptation of The Dark Half. Throttle, a short story co-written by King and his son, Joe Hill, is a sort of homage to Richard Matheson's Duel, which fans might also remember as a gripping TV movie that happened to be one of Steven Spielberg's first projects. HBO Max will have the honor of hosting the adaptation. Suffer the Little Children, a short tale about a volatile relationship between a teacher and one of her students, has previously been adapted into a largely unknown short film. Now, it's been picked up by writer-director Sean Carter, who plans to expand the piece into a full-length film. He expressed genuine excitement over his involvement in an interview with Sci-Fi Wire. It fits right into that classic King paradigm, a tragically flawed lead character put into a shockingly unimaginable scenario. It's a tiny peek into a mythology that I can't wait to expand into a full-length movie. Drunken Fireworks, a short story about neighbors exchanging hostilities via fireworks displays, is also in line for development, with James Franco on board to star. However, there's been no news about it since 2016. Franco has since been accused of sexual misconduct, which he has addressed publicly.
One of the things that I've learned is that this is a conversation that obviously needs to be had.
It goes without saying that his involvement may rest on the outcome of investigations into the matter. BBC reported in February of 2021 that the lawsuits have been settled in court, so perhaps we'll hear more about this adaptation sooner than later. Furthermore, there are a handful of King's novels that are still in the early stages of development, some of which have already been adapted in the past. One such work is Salem's Lot, a classic novel of vampires in a small Maine town that has seen 2 miniseries iterations. Horror icon James Wan will produce the upcoming full-length film, and Gary Dauberman, co-writer of both It films, will direct. The novel Rose Matter, which deals with both domestic violence and rich fantasy elements, is now in the hands of director Osip Bernstein, whose work King greatly admires. Netflix is poised to continue its run of Stephen King adaptations with Mr. Harrigan's Phone, a novella found within King's If It Bleeds that features iPhone communication from beyond the grave. Numerous producers have signed on to aid in its development, including prolific and genre-bending Ryan Murphy and horror stalwart Jason Blum. Johannes Roberts is set to adapt the story within a story, Hearts in Atlantis, which is part of the collection of the same name. The movie, however, will simply be called Hearts. Needless to say, we're very much intrigued to find out how his interpretation will compare to the 2001 adaptation, which of course is loosely based on Low Men in Yellow Coats, another novella within the Hearts in Atlantis collection. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about Stephen King are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.